Good afternoon. Må jeg presentere meg? Jeg Hans Christian Andersen. Oh, excuse me. I forget that you don't all speak Danish. Let me start again. Hello. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Hans Christian Andersen. You know, the writer. You may not be familiar with my name, but I know that you are familiar with the stories that I have written. For I have written stories that have been read and loved the whole world over. Yeah, I wrote a story that you probably know. It is about a lonely little bird. It is called Den grimme ælling. Oh, in English you would say, The Ugly Duckling. You know that story, don't you? Yeah. And I wrote a story about an emperor who loved clothes so much, but he ended up walking through the streets with no clothes on at all. Oh! It was called The Emperor's New Clothes. And I understand that in America, a Mr. Disney, he took one of my stories and added some music, and added characters and changed the plot. But it was my story to begin with. It is one of my favorites. It is called The Little Mermaid. You know that story, don't you? Yeah. Well, whenever I meet with my young friends, they ask me, Mr. Andersen, how is it that you can think of such fantastic stories? Well, it is with my imagination. How many of you have imagination? Let me see by raise of hands. Oh, I thought you all would have it. Yes, my imagination started when I was just a little boy. My father was a shoemaker. He didn't make many shoes, and so we were rather poor, but he did have some books. And at night, he would read to me from the books stories of kings and princes. My grandmother, she could not read, but she knew all of the old stories from long ago about trolls and witches and adventurers off on a quest. Oh, and listening to those stories of princes and adventures, I could imagine that I was a handsome prince off on a wonderful adventure. Oh, but I was the son of a poor shoemaker, and who could imagine a poor prince? If you have a good imagination, you might come up with a story like this. You see, there was once a poor but happy prince, and he wanted to be married. I don't know why, but he had gone to the imperial city not far away, and there had been a parade, and in the parade he saw the princess, the emperor's daughter, and he fell instantly in love. Ah, she's so beautiful, he thought. So he went right back to his little kingdom, and he wrote a letter of proposal. Dear princess, I saw you in the parade. You are very beautiful. I have fallen immediately in love with you. Would you please marry me? And he signed it, a poor but happy prince. And he put it in an envelope to send off to the emperor's daughter. But then he thought, oh wait, when you ask someone to marry you, you need to send some sort of present. But what can I send? I am just a poor but happy prince. Ah, he thought, I have two treasures. Those are what I will send. And out he went to his garden. Now in his garden, there grew a magical rose bush. It was magic, you see, because this bush only grew one red rose. And the rose appeared only once every 5 years. But when the rose opened, if you could smell that rose, oh, you would forget all of your troubles and worries. It was very special, yeah? So he clipped that rose. It was the 5th year and it was almost ready to open. And he put it in a little silver vase to send off to the princess. Also in the garden, there lived a nightingale. Do you know what a nightingale is? No, well, a nightingale is a little bird. Its feathers are grey, not very pretty. Ah, but when the nightingale sings, I can't whistle very well, but the nightingale, when it sings, oh, it sounds beautiful. And this nightingale, better than all the nightingales in the world, when it sang, it would remind everyone of the one that they loved the most. The prince coaxed the bird out of the tree. He put it in a little golden cage and put that with the vase in a big box. He wrapped the box in very colorful paper, and then he wrapped it and tied it up with beautiful silk ribbons. He put his proposal on top and he called for his messenger. The messenger came marching in, and the prince said, "My good man, would you please take this package and my letter of proposal to the emperor's palace, present it to the emperor for his daughter, the princess, and then tell me what she says." Well, the messenger, and he marched along the road, up the hill, down the other side, over the river, and through the woods, until he came to the emperor's palace and presented it to the emperor himself. Now, the emperor was sitting on his throne, like this, looking very imperial. And at a table nearby sat the beautiful young princess. She was surrounded by all of her ladies in waiting. Ladies in waiting are the ladies that wait for the princess. I don't know what they're waiting for, but that is their job. And they were playing Tea Party. Yeah, you may have played that for yourself at some time. It was the only thing the princess knew how to play. And so she was asking her ladies in waiting, "Would you like 1 lump of sugar or 2 lumps of sugar in your tea?" All of the ladies in waiting would smile and say, "1 lump of sugar, yeah, like that. That was all they were paid to say. So the emperor said, "My daughter, behold, we have a present from a poor but happy prince." Well, the princess was excited. She said, "Oh, I love presents. I hope this time it is a furry little kitten." All of the ladies in waiting smiled and said, "Furry little kitten, yeah, Just like that. So the emperor, he opened the ribbon, the paper, opened the box, and he pulled out the silver vase with the red rose. The rose had already opened, and so the emperor smelled it. Ooh. Oh, what a wonderful smell. Why, I feel happy. My dear, come and smell the rose that was sent by a poor but happy prince. Well, the princess, she got up from her seat, but she didn't come very close, and she looked at it and she said, "Oh, it looks nice, but can you tell me, is it made out of silk or out of glass?" And the emperor said, "Oh, my dear, it is a real rose with a wonderful smell. Come, smell for yourself." Well, do you know what the princess did? Well, of course you don't. I haven't told you, have I? Well, she stomped her foot and she said, "Oh, fiddle." All of the ladies in waiting said, "Oh, fiddle, yeah, like that. And she said, "What do I want with a real rose? We have roses all around the castle. They all smell the same to me, and then they all fall apart. I don't want that." Well, the emperor then pulled out the little golden cage. And the nightingale started to sing its sweetest song. Oh, much, much prettier than that. In fact, it sang so beautifully. It reminded the emperor of the one that he loved the most. And it was the empress, but she had passed away the year before. And so a tear came to his eye, and he said, "Oh, my dear, doesn't it sound lovely? It reminds me of your dear mother." Well, the princess, she looked at it and she said, "Oh, it sounds all right, but show me, where do you wind it up?" The emperor said, "Oh, my dear, this is a real bird. Listen to it sing." Do you know what the princess did? Once again, she stomped her foot and she cried, "Oh, fiddle!" And the ladies in waiting, they all said, "Oh, fiddle, yeah, like that. And she said, "What do I want with a real bird? All they do is make noise and messes in the cage. You have to feed it and water it. I don't want those things. Send them back." Now, was that a very nice thing to do? Well, the emperor gave the package back to the messenger, and he marched through the woods, over the river, up the hill, and down the other side, and along the road until he returned to the little castle of the poor but happy prince, and told him everything that the princess had said. "Now, what for a princess is this?" cried the prince. "I have sent her 2 treasures with a sincere proposal of marriage, and she has thrown them all away as if they were garbage. I want to see what she is really like for myself. But I cannot go looking like a prince. She will treat me very differently. I must go in... How do you say it when you change the way you look so that people do not know who you are? In disguise, that's it." And so the prince, he took off his royal jacket and put on a dirty old coat. He took off his royal pants and put on some dirty old breeches with holes in the knees. He removed his royal crown and he put on an old straw hat that was frayed around the edges. From his dresser, he took some brown and black shoe polish, and he smeared that on his hands and on his face to make himself look dirty. He even took some brown shoe polish and smeared it on his teeth. He was right, it looked disgusting, which is just what he wanted. He looked like some dirty beggar. And so it was, as a dirty-looking beggar, he marched along the road and up the hill and down the other side, over the river and through the woods, until he came to the emperor's palace and pounded on the door. Boom, 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 boom. Well, the emperor himself was passing by the door, and he knew he could open it as well as his servant, and so he did. And there stood this dirty-looking beggar. The beggar smiled widely. The emperor saw his teeth and went, "Ew, what do you want, you dirty beggar?" "If you please, your highness, I would like a job here in the castle, please. I will do anything." "You are so dirty. You remind me of a pig. But then I do need someone to look after my pigs and swine." You know, swine are the really big pigs. So you may be my swineherd. There's a little shack out by the pigsty. You may stay there." "Oh, thank you, your excellency," said the swineherd. And off he went to that little shack that day. That night, while everyone up in the castle was sleeping, the swineherd was busy crafting something through the night. Ding, 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 ding. And by morning, it was done. He had made a pot. You know, like you cook soup with, yeah? But this pot was very special. He had placed little bells around the edge so that when you boiled water in the pot, the bells played a tune like this. Do, 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 do. Do you know this tune? Yeah, it is about loving someone who doesn't love you in return. So the next morning, the swineherd had the pot there by the pigsty, boiling water, playing its song. Do, 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 while he was feeding the pigs and swine. Well, the pigs didn't care for the music, they were just there for the food. But who should be walking in the garden nearby but the princess and all of her ladies in waiting? And from far away, the princess heard the music. Could you do that with me? Let's try. Do, 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 do. Yeah, like that. And the princess said, I know that song. I can play it on the piano with 2 fingers. If that swineherd knows that song, he must be a cultured swineherd. All of the ladies in waiting smiled and they said, cultured swineherd, yeah, just like that. And the princess said, I want that pot. Lady-in-waiting number 1, I want you to go ask the swineherd what he wants for that wonderful pot. I must have it. Well, lady-in-waiting number 1, she walked over to the swineherd and she said, Swineherd. He smiled widely. Ew! Swineherd, the princess wants your pot. How much do you want for it? Oh, my pot for the princess. Oh, I will ask only for 10 kisses from the princess. Are you crazy? Cried the lady-in-waiting, and she ran back to the princess. Oh no, oh me, oh my, oh dear, oh, 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 oh. Well, what does he want for the pot? Oh, your highness, I cannot tell you. But you must tell me, I'm the princess. What does he want? Oh, but your highness, the swineherd wants 10 kisses from you. Oh, is he crazy? Cried the princess, and she ran at the swineherd like this, shaking her finger. Ooh. Has anyone shaken their finger at you? No, you know. But the swineherd, she said, you are a naughty swineherd. If you want kisses, I'll let you kiss my ladies-in-waiting. All of the ladies-in-waiting went, ew, we don't want to kiss a dirty swineherd. I'm the princess. If I tell you to kiss him, you have to kiss him. But no, interrupted the swineherd. No, I want kisses from the princess or from no one. So I will keep my little pot. Stomped the princess. I want that pot. No, very well. I will give you 10 kisses, but no more. And ladies-in-waiting, I want you to make a circle around us and spread wide your dresses so that no one will see me kissing a dirty swineherd. And so that is what happened, you see. The ladies-in-waiting, they made a big circle around the princess, the swineherd, and his pot. And they spread wide their dresses, and they started counting the kisses. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, until the swineherd had his kisses, and the princess had her pot. And she went back to her room in the palace. She put it in the fireplace and she boiled water in it all day long. And she and the ladies-in-waiting listened to it play its song. Do, 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 do. And they had a wonderful time. Oh, but that night, Again, while everyone in the castle slept, the swineherd, was busy back in his little shack. Until by morning he had crafted a rattle. But not just any rattle that goes... No, this was a very special rattle. It could play complete songs, Danish waltzes and polkas, like this. And so, the next morning, as he was feeding the pigs and the swine, he was shaking the rattle. But the pigs didn't care. They can't dance. But who should be walking in the garden nearby? You knew that. It was the princess and all of her ladies in waiting. And as they were walking, the princess heard the music. And she said, "Oh, what lovely dance music." All of the ladies in waiting, they smiled and they said, what? "Lovely dance music. Yeah, You knew that. And the princess said, "Lady in waiting number 1, I want that rattle. So please go ask the swineherd what he wants for it, but tell him I will not give him 10 kisses as I did yesterday." Lady in waiting number 1, she walked over to the swineherd and she said, "Swineherd?" He smiled widely. "Ew, swineherd, the princess would like your rattle. How much do you want for it? But she will not give you 10 kisses as she did yesterday." "Oh," said the swineherd, "well, this is a very, very special rattle to me. I will sell it to her for only 100 kisses from the princess." "Are you mad?" cried the lady in waiting, and she ran back to the princess. "Oh no, oh me, oh my, oh dear, oh. Well, what does he want? Oh, I can't tell you, it's too horrible. You have to tell me I'm the princess." "Oh, but your highness, he wants 100 kisses from you." "Oh, is he mad?" cried the princess, and she ran at the princess once again, shaking her finger. "Oh, you are a terrible swineherd. If you want to have kisses, I'll let you kiss all the ladies in waiting." "Ew, we don't want to kiss a dirty swineherd. I'm the princess. If I told you to kiss a pig, you would have to kiss the pig." No, interrupted the swineherd. "No, I just want kisses from your highness or from no one, so I will keep my special rattle." The princess stomped her foot. "Oh, I want that rattle. Sounds so nice. Well, Father says we should support the arts." Now, that is in the story. You could read it when you go there. Very well. Oh, I will give you 100 kisses. But ladies in waiting, I want you to make a big circle around us and spread wide your dresses so that no one will see me kissing a dirty swineherd. And so once again, that is what happened. The ladies in waiting made a big circle around the princess and the swineherd, and they spread wide their dresses, and they started counting the kisses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so on. But you know, it was about this time that the emperor would come out onto the palace balcony to look over his empire, and he saw something strange. What is going on down there by the pigsty with all the ladies in waiting? I need to find out. And so, still in his robe and his slippers, the emperor ran down the stairs. He trotted through the courtyard. He went out into the garden, and then he tiptoed through the tulips until he came up behind the ladies in waiting as they were counting something. 84, 85, 86, and he peeked over their shoulders, and "Ooh!" bellowed the emperor. All of the ladies in waiting screamed, "Ah!" and they ran in all directions. "Oh no, oh me, oh my, oh dear, oh, 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 oh." And the emperor said, "My daughter, the princess, is kissing a dirty swineherd. I am so embarrassed. I am so humiliated. It is more than I can bear. Out of my palace, both of you, go." And he took off his slipper and he used it like a paddle and boom, 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 drove them both out of the palace gates and then boom, boom, shut and barred the door. Well, the swineherd started walking through the woods, over the river, up the hill and down the other side, with the princess following behind. And as they were walking along the road, the princess said, "Oh, now I wish that I had looked at the letter that was sent by the poor but happy prince with those two presents. Then perhaps I would be at a party or something and not stuck out here with a dirty swineherd. Oh." When the swineherd heard this, he went behind some trees. He took off the old dirty coat and put on his royal jacket. He took off the dirty old breeches with holes and he put on his royal pants. He threw away the old straw hat and replaced it with his royal crown. In the stream nearby, he washed his hands and his face. And there was something else he had to do. Yeah, he had to brush his teeth. Ting! And so it was, as a poor but happy prince, that he came back before her and said, "Hello, Your Highness. I am the poor but happy prince, and I was the one who sent you the rose and the nightingale, along with a sincere proposal of marriage. But I have learned for myself that you are mean and spoiled and selfish, and I don't want to see you ever again. So, farewell, goodbye." And with that, the prince marched along the road and into his own castle and thump, thump, shut and barred the door. When the princess realized what had happened, she went and pounded on the castle door. Boom, 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 boom. "Oh, please, let me in, let me in." But none of the servants would open the door to her, for she was mean and spoiled and selfish. And so this princess sat down on a rock near to the castle door, and she started to whine. And then she started to sing that little tune that you already know. Could you sing it along? Do, 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 do. Well, she is there to this day. Yeah, she is, because I went to visit the prince at his castle and I had to walk around this whining princess to get through the gate. She was a princess, it is true, but she was not a true princess. Let me tell you how you might know a true princess. For this story, I will take some paper, fold it, and I will take my scissors, and I will make for you a papier clip. Oh, that would mean a paper cut design, so that you might see with your eyes what I am seeing in my imagination as I tell the story. And this is a story that I call Prinsessan på ärta. Oh, in English you would probably say The Princess and the Pea. For there was, in another time, in another place, another prince. And he wanted to be married. I think it must be some royal obsession. But this prince did not want to marry just any princess, oh no. He wanted to marry a true princess. And he knew that a true princess would be very hard to find. And so this prince set off on a search, a quest, if you will, for a true princess to be his bride. He searched all around the world and a couple of islands. But there was always something wrong with the princesses that he met. Some of the princesses would be too much like,
"Oh, I don't like that. Send it away."
how would you call a princess like that? Mean, yeah. Grumpy, perhaps, yeah. Other princesses would be like, oh, he could not stand all the giggling and laughing. I don't blame him. And so, after searching all around the world, and a couple of islands, for a true princess, the prince returned home to his father, the king, and his mother, the queen. And they welcomed him home gladly after all that time. And his father said, "My son, have you found for yourself a true princess to be your bride?" The prince said, "Alas, my father, I have not. I have searched all around the world and a couple of islands. And there was always something wrong with the princesses that I met." His mother, the queen, nodded and said,
"Oh, yeah. Ever since your father married me, a true princess has been hard to find."
It was probably true. Well, the royal family retired to their royal beds for the royal rest that night. And as they slept, a terrible storm blew into the kingdom. Oh, it was a frightening tempest. The wind howled around the castle wall. Ooh! Only louder than that. Do you think you could howl like the wind? Let's try. Ooh! Oh, that was better, yeah. And the lightning flashed, and the thunder rolled. Can you roll like thunder? Oh, that was good. And the rain, oh, the rain, my friends, it came down out of the sky as if someone had dumped a bathtub on top of the kingdom. You don't need to do that one. I don't want you to splash the person next to you. Oh, and in this terrible storm, in the middle of the night, there came a knock on the castle door. Boom, 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 boom. Well, the king was surprised to hear someone knocking on his door in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the night. And so he himself ran down to see who was knocking on the door. And when he opened the door, to his surprise, there stood a beautiful young lady. Oh, but she was soaking wet. She had been caught out in the storm, and her hair was plastered to her neck and her shoulders. Perhaps like you young ones with long hair when you get out of your bath. It was just the same way. Oh, and her gown was soaked through and through. Water was dripping out the toes of her shoes, and she looked miserable.
"I'm sorry to bother you so late at night," said this lovely young lady, "but I have become lost from my ladies-in-waiting in this terrible storm. May I please spend the night here with you in your castle?"
Well, by this time, the prince and the queen had joined the king there at the front door, and when the prince heard what she said, he asked the young lady, "You say you have ladies-in-waiting. Are you a princess?" And she said,
"Oh, yes, I am. And I am a true princess as well."
"Oh, really?" said the queen to herself. "We'll see about that." And as quickly as she could, the queen ran to the royal kitchen. And from the royal cook's table she took something and ran even faster to the royal guest room. She stood before the guest bed and threw off the covers and rolled the mattress onto the floor. And there on the wooden frame of the bed, she placed
what she had brought from the kitchen. It was one hard, round, dry pea, like you make pea soup with, you know. And she placed that hard, round, dry pea in the middle of the bed frame. And then on top of that, she placed 20 mattresses. Thump, 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 thump. And on top of that, she placed 20 feathery quilts as soft as could be. And this was the bed that she made for this visiting princess. Well, the princess came in and she saw that strange bed and she said, "Oh my, this is a very strange bed, but I am very tired. Thank you very much. Mangatak." That's how they say thank you in Denmark. And the queen said, "I trust you will sleep well tonight, my dear." And so the queen left, and the pretty little princess, she climbed up into that bed. Oh, and way up. And she pulled the covers up to her neck. And she went to sleep. Oh, or tried to anyway. Ouch! She lay on her stomach. Oh! She lay on her side. Oh! She lay this way. Oh! That way. Ow! She tossed and turned. She turned and tossed. She sat up in her bed and yawned and stretched. She could not get comfortable at all. If you could have seen her in her bed that night, it would have looked like this. If you have very keen eyes, you may see the pea that is under all of the quilts and mattresses. Well, the next morning, the princess joined the royal family at the royal breakfast table, and the queen said, "I trust you had a good night's sleep, yeah?" And the princess said, "I'm sorry to say I did not. There was something in that bed that poked me no matter which way I lay. I'm not surprised if I'm black and blue all over. Oh." And the queen went, "Oh my, I put a pea under all of the mattresses and quilts because I knew that only a true princess would be sensitive enough to feel it. And so it must be that you are a true princess." "Hurrah!" shouted the prince, and he jumped up from the table. He took the princess by the hand and said, "You are a true princess. I have searched all around the world and a couple of islands for one such as you. Would you please marry me?" "Oh my, yes," said the young princess. "And will you live with me here in my castle forever, my dear?" asked the prince. "Oh my, yes, if you promise to get me a new bed." Well, the prince promised to get her a new bed, and they were soon married. Yeah. And you know, they took that one hard, round, dry pea from underneath the mattresses and quilts, and they put it on a pedestal in the Royal Museum for everyone to see. And it is there to this day, if someone hasn't eaten it by mistake. Now that is a story, and that is how you can tell a true princess. I will set that up like that, so that you might see. Oh, let me take off my coat if I may. It's warmer here. Oh. You know, sometimes it is a princess who needs to find the right person. And how can she know who is the best for her? It reminds me of a story. You see, I was born in Odense, Denmark, and outside of Odense there was a very large estate.
a nobleman had a very rich place to live in. He had many servants, lots of cattle and sheep, and he had 2 sons, of which he was most proud, and his 2 sons were most proud of themselves. Yeah, they thought they were smarter than anyone else in the kingdom. And to show off, the first son, he memorized all the words in the dictionary. Yeah, to show how smart he was. The second son said, I will do better than that. And he memorized all the laws of the land. He could speak for an hour or more, and you wouldn't understand a thing he said because, well, it was law. One day, to this rich man's estate outside of Odense, there came a messenger from the king. Hear ye, hear ye! The princess has declared that she will marry the man who can speak to her the best. When the brothers heard this, they were so excited, for they thought, we have memorized the dictionary, we have memorized the laws. Surely one of us will be able to speak to the princess the best and win her hand in marriage. And so they practiced in front of a mirror, saying every word clearly and distinctly, so that it sounded good, you know. And the first brother thought, he took some cod liver oil. It smells terrible, but he rubbed that on his jaws, and it worked to make his mouth move even freer, like this. The second brother saw that, and he said, I'll do better than that. And he poured a little bit in a cup, and he gargled with it. It tasted terrible, but it did work to make his tongue fast, and his words as smooth as oil. And so it was that they were ready to go off to see the princess and speak to her the best. And their father, the nobleman, he brought forth from his barn his 2 best horses. To the first son, who had memorized all the words in the dictionary, he gave a horse that was white as milk. And to the second son, who had memorized all the laws of the land, he gave a beautiful horse that was black as coal. The 2 sons proudly mounted their horses, and all of the servants came out of the house, down the stairs, to see the brothers off. And you could be a part of this story. Would you please be the servants in the story? For when the brothers were ready, all of the servants smiled. That is what you do. Good. And they waved. Can you do that? All right. And all of the servants cried, goodbye. Oh, but wait. They said it in Danish. So in Danish, you say, farvel. There, now you can speak Danish. And the brothers waved and said, farvel. And they clicked their heels. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. And off they rode to see the princess and speak to her the best. But just then, down the stairs of the rich man's home, there came the third son. I did not tell you about him before because the others didn't really pay much attention to him. He did not try to show off and memorize dictionaries or laws, but he would just read storybooks. Yeah, and then he would share the stories with the children of the servants. Well, his father and his brothers thought that was a silly waste of time. And since his name was Hans, like my first name, they called him Silly Hans. And so it was that Silly Hans came running down the stairs out into the yard, and he said, brothers, stop, wait, where are you going? Well, the brothers stopped their horses. Whoa! That's how you stop a horse, you know. And they turned and said, Silly Hans, didn't you hear the messenger from the king? The princess will marry the man who can speak to her the best. So surely one of us will win her hand in marriage. Oh, farewell. And they turned and clicked their heels. Yeah. And off they rode to see the princess, to speak to her the best. Well, now Silly Hans was excited, and he turned to his father and said, "Father, would you please give me a horse so that I might ride off with my brothers to see the princess and speak to her the best?" The nobleman said, "Silly Hans, you do not memorize dictionaries or law books or important things like that. You just read storybooks. So no, I will not give you one of my horses." "But father," said Silly Hans, "I want to see the princess. I could probably speak to her the best and win her hand in marriage if she will have me. And I'll marry her if she doesn't want me either, I guess. Who knows? And since you won't give me a horse, well, I'll ride what I have." And Silly Hans went to the barn and he pulled out his billy goat. Yeah, he had raised it from a little kid, and now it was a great big billy goat with a shaggy, furry back and long, curly horns. And so Silly Hans, he climbed up on the goat. He waved to all of the servants, and the servants all smiled and waved, and they said, "Farewell." And Silly Hans said, "Farewell. Giddy up, goat." And off he went bouncing down the road on the back of a goat. It wasn't long before Silly Hans had caught up with his brothers, and he was singing a little song that he had made up along the way. Here I am, I'm coming to marry the princess. Brothers, stop and see what I have found." Well, the brothers stopped their horses. Whoa! Just like that. And Silly Hans held up a dead crow. The brothers said, "Silly Hans, that's a dead crow. Are you taking that to the princess?" "Yes, I am," he said. "I don't think she has one of these." "I'm sure she doesn't," laughed the brothers. And they turned quickly and, yeah, boom, 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 boom. Off they rode to see the princess, to speak to her the best. But it wasn't long before Silly Hans and the goat caught up with him once again. And he was singing his song. Here I am, I'm coming to marry the princess. Oh, brothers, stop and see what wonder I have found. Well, the brothers stopped their horses. Whoa! You got it. And they turned, and Silly Hans waved around an old wooden shoe. It was broken on the back. And the brother said, "Silly Hans, that's an old shoe the farmer has thrown away. Are you taking that to the princess?" "Yes, I am," said Silly Hans. "I'm sure it will be very useful." The brothers laughed. They turned, they clicked their heels, yeah, boom, 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 boom. And off they rode to see the princess, to speak to her the best. But it wasn't long before once again Silly Hans was right there, singing his song. Here I am, I'm coming to marry the princess. Brothers, I have found a treasure, stop and see. Well, the brothers stopped their horses. Whoa! And they turned, and Silly Hans reached into his pockets and he pulled out gobs of mud. Black and gooey, sticky mud. And the brothers said, "Silly Hans, that is mud from the ditch. Are you going to take that to the princess?" "Oh yes," he said, "it is the best sort of mud. Look how you can make mud pies." The brothers didn't say anything. They turned, they clicked their heels, yeah, boom, 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 boom. And off they rode to see the princess, to speak to her the best, leaving Silly Hans far behind in the dust. They arrived at the princess's palace long before Silly Hans, and the two brothers were pushed into a room that was full of men, all of whom were thinking they could speak to the princess the best. And all of these men were looking at each other, including the brothers looking at each of the men and thinking, they can't speak to the princess the best there. And they were thinking mean and jealous kinds of thoughts. And soon everything that they had practiced in their head would just leave, because when you're thinking mean thoughts, you can't think good things. And so it was one by one that the men were shown into the princess's room, and then the guards would come out and take another and another, until at last there were only two left, the two brothers. And so the guards came to the first brother, and they pushed him rather rudely through the door into the princess's chamber. And he was surprised, because the ceiling was a giant mirror. And when he looked up, he could see himself looking back down, upside down on the ceiling. And then he saw in each corner of the room there was a furnace that was bellowing forth flames and heat. Oh, it made the room as hot as an oven. And then he looked up to the front, and he saw the princess sitting on her throne. She had a very cold, hard look on her face. And on each side of her was a table. And at each table there sat two scribes. And the scribes by this time had very sour-looking faces from hearing all the ridiculous things that men were saying to the princess. They looked like this. Can you make sour faces? Oh, looks like you've been practicing. And the scribes, do you know what a scribe is? Oh, excuse me, but you see, a scribe is someone who writes down everything for the royal family. And these scribes that day were writing down everything that the men would say to the princess to send off to the newspapers, so that the whole world would read what ridiculous things these men were saying to the princess. And so it was that these scribes were writing everything down. And the brother came in, and he came forward and he said, "Hello, Your Highness. I am here to speak to you to you the best, but I must say that it is incredibly hot in here today. Why is that?" And the princess, with her cold, hard look, said, "That is because we are roasting roosters today." And this man, who knew all of the words of the dictionary, could only ask, "Huh?" And the scribes with sour faces, they wrote, "Huh?" And the princess yelled, "No good! Throw him out!" So the guards marched up, they picked up the brother by the arms. "Wait, what are you doing? Wait, no, They threw him out the window, and then they pushed in the second brother. And he came in and saw himself upside down on the ceiling, and he saw the furnaces bellowing forth flames and heat. And then he saw the princess, beautiful, but with that cold, hard look. And the scribes, with their sour faces, writing everything down to send off to the newspapers. And this man, he became so nervous, his legs began to shake a little bit. But he came forward and said, "Hello, Your Highness. I am here to speak to you the best. But I must declare that it is unlawfully hot in this room today. Why is that?" And the princess, with her cold, hard look, said, "That is because we are roasting roosters today." And this man, who knew how to ask all the sorts of questions of the law, could only think to ask, "Huh?" And the scribes wrote, "Huh?" And the princess yelled, "No good, throw him out." And so the guards picked him up, "Wait, what?" And threw him out the window. He landed on the first brother as he was getting up. But just then, the castle doors burst open, and in came Silly Hans, riding on his billy goat, right up to the princess. He was still singing his song. Do you remember it? Here I am, I'm coming to marry the princess. Whoa, goat, whoa, stop. Oh, hello, princess, I am Silly Hans. I've come to talk to you the best.
Oh, but why is it so hot in here today? And the princess, with her cold, hard look, said, that is because we are roasting roosters today. Silly Hans scratched his head and then said, oh, well, do you think you could cook my crow also? Well, this was different. The princess was surprised. If you could have seen her face, it would have changed a little from that cold, hard look to where you could see a little bit of a smile at the corner of her mouth like this. Well, we would cook your crow, but we don't have any more pots or pans. What do you think about that? Silly Hans said, oh, no problem. I brought my own pot. And he pulled out the old wooden shoe that was broken. He put the crow right inside and said, look, I think it's done. In fact, it's turning black. Shall we eat? This was very different. And that smile started to spread to the other side of her mouth like this. And the princess said, oh, we can't eat yet, for we don't have any gravy to serve with our meal. What do you think about that? And Silly Hans said, no worry. I have brought my own gravy. And he reached in his pockets and he pulled out, you knew it, the mud. He said, look, I have gravy enough for us all. Shall we eat now? The princess was starting to enjoy this little game. And she said, oh, before we eat, I must tell you that these men are my scribes, and they are writing everything down for the newspapers for all the world to read. What do you think about that? And Silly Hans said, oh, they are so important, I think I should serve them the gravy first. And with that, Silly Hans threw those gobs of mud at the scribes, and they looked up and it hit them right in their faces. And on their papers they wrote, I don't know how to spell that. Well, the princess, she laughed. She stood up, she clapped her hands, and she said, oh, I don't know how you did that, but I hope that you will teach me, for you are the man who has spoken to me the best. You're the man that I would like to marry. Silly Hans smiled and said, I thought you might. And soon thereafter, Silly Hans and the princess were married. And years later, he became Good Prince Hans. And this story is true. Yeah, it is true because I read the newspapers that the scribes had sent everything to. And you can always believe what you read in the newspapers. Can't you? Oh, well, I have enjoyed sharing stories from my imagination with you. The next time we meet, perhaps you could share some of the stories from your imagination with me. Yeah? But let me see. What time is it? It is time for me to go and meet my good friend, Mr. Dickens, for tea. Oh, you've probably heard some of his stories too. You can look up his stories and my stories in your library, and they will be very entertaining, I'm sure. Well, remember how we say goodbye in Denmark? Yeah. Farvel. Until the next time.